Good evening, Sunday pubbers. If you're here for the first time and you don't know what's going on, or you don't know what this is about, it's basically just a hangout for bookish friends every Sunday, usually every Sunday. And this is the 34th, I believe, Sunday pub. Been doing it for a little while. Welcome to the Sunday pub. Who is here? Let me know in the comments if you're here. I am sorry about last week. Last week, I was very unexpectedly in no state to be doing a live stream. And the week before that, I was out of town. Larry, you didn't miss a bunch of Sundays because, like I'm saying, hi also. Larry, you didn't really miss a bunch of Sundays because the last two Sundays there were no Sunday pubs, unfortunately. So you maybe didn't miss that much. I was the previous week, last week I was a bit sick, and the week before I was out of town. So no pubs. Rogue, what's crack? Hey, look who it is.
Hello.
It's Tori, all fancied up.
I know. I feel like an alien.
Tori with big old dangly feather earrings and lipstick and makeup and everything.
I know. I clean up okay.
You are a girl.
Thanks. I didn't know that was under suspicion, but
no,
I'm glad to have confirmed.
It wasn't actually, but like you said yourself many times, you are a tomboyish kind of girl. And I was saying to you in the chat earlier, like the first time I saw you with like all of your hair down, I was like,
she actually doesn't sleep in a bandana.
Tori's kind of hot.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know. Today, I mean, I wear lipstick like twice a year, probably.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things, you know, you feel like having a posh day and you put a little red lipstick on and it's nice.
Yeah. For me, it's mostly the beard. Like it seems like with the beard, there's not that much point because people can't see my lips that well, I guess. But
well, the red lipstick would definitely make them.
That's true.
More.
Then it really pops out. Yeah.
I can see
I'm
that.
going to a fancy function or something, and it's worth it. Hi, Aslan. Hi, Ida. Hi, Thornall. Thornall, you'll be happy to see I'm wearing my BPRD t-shirt from Hellboy, if anybody doesn't know that. It's the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense. Hi, Jerome. Hi, Caro. Hi, Colton. Yeah, a lot of the regulars are here. And speaking of regulars, Mr. Exciter himself, Raf, Blutaxt.
Thank you for telling me what kind of shirt I'm wearing.
For those of you who are not aware of who Raf is blind. So...
And I just like picked the first shirt that I found.
Just grab. I've actually wondered about that because I mean, I guess when you do t-shirt shopping, you're doing it with someone.
No, what I do is I buy shirts at concerts.
You only buy shirts at concerts. Okay, that explains everything.
All my shirts are from concerts. So the fact that I have like, I don't know, 500 shirts tells you that I've been to like at least 500 shows at this point.
And then you know what shirt you're buying because you know what concert you're at.
Exactly. And I'm asking for like the tour shirt or whatever. So I know what kind of shirt I'm buying at that point.
Okay.
That being said, this one is an incredibly ugly shirt though.
It's not one of your more exciting designs, I would say. Yeah,
but that's the point with Exciter, right? They're a Canadian band, and all the things they have done are incredibly Canadian and incredibly ugly. The music is bad, the cover designs are bad, everything is bad. But there's like a point at like, I don't know, 3 a.m. when you have at a party and you have had like way too many beers, and suddenly you really need to listen to Exciter, and that's sort of like when they suddenly work.
I've been really drunk at 3 a.m, but I've never had the urge to listen to Exciter.
Because you don't know what Exciter are, right?
Exactly. I think more normal for me at drunk at 3 a.m. would be like AC/DC or something from my Australian youth.
Yeah, that makes sense. Rose Tattoo.
Rose Tattoo. Somebody who actually knows Rose Tattoo.
I have seen Rose Tattoo live.
Oh my God, I haven't even seen Rose Tattoo live.
And Angry Anderson was in the 3rd Mad Max movie. together.
Yeah,
with
no,
you.
I noticed that. But yeah, for those of you who don't know anything about old Australian bands, Rose Tattoo was a screamy band before being the screamy band was kind of cool.
They're like AC/DC, but in a more like gutter way.
A bit rougher. Like
Yes.
AC/DC is pretty rough, but Rose Tattoo's like
More
gutter. Yeah, like you said, gutter AC/DC. Yeah.
And they're really cool.
And the main singer, who is completely bald and looks like he gets in a fight every Friday, is named Angry Anderson. Yeah, it's actually his name. There's kind of a thing, I guess, with Australian bands and bald lead singers. Midnight Oil was one of my favorite bands when I was growing up. Not the new commercialized Midnight Oil, but the old Angry Midnight Oil. And I actually met Peter Garrett, the lead singer. I actually, met is probably too strong a term. I ran into him in an airport, and I stopped him and I said, "I love your band," and he said, "Me too." And then I said, "Thank you for all the music." He said, "You're welcome. I'm sorry, but I have to go," because he's a politician. Actually, he's actually in the Senate. And
which makes sense because Midnight Oil was always a very political.
They were very
band.
political. Yeah. And he was consequent enough to not just yell in songs about what should change, but to join the government and try and make it change.
That's pretty cool.
He is I don't know if this is all still true, actually, but he started the nuclear disarmament party in Australia. You can start a political party on any platform in Australia. There was actually for a number of years, there was a political party called the Let's Have a Party Party.
That's pretty cool.
And they were actually an official political party that you could theoretically elect. Luckily, not too many people did. Look who else it is. It's Mr. Belltube.
Hello. I heard something about starting a political party.
No.
I would like to begin the nonsense party.
I have
in Australia, you totally
the election
could.
results today.
What's that?
I said, I have avoided looking at the election results in Thuringia and Saxony so far.
I wasn't even aware that there was an election in Thuringia and Saxony.
There's state elections in Thuringia and Saxony, and from my expectation, it's going to be very, very rough unless you're in favor of the AFD, which I hope you're not.
The AFD are sort of the Nazi light political party.
Yes.
So yeah, and they do like Nazis everywhere. They do pretty well in rural areas.
And they're doing really well in both Saxony and Thuringia. So I expect them to be really big, and then we'll see if the Conservatives cave and do actually cave and do a coalition or not. And that's when shit gets dark.
Yeah.
So
I mean the differences between cities and rural areas, like if the AFD has a like an organized protest or something, people gather in Berlin to throw things at them.
Yeah,
like they don't have any chance. They don't have any chance in Berlin, but in rural areas they do. Let me go through the comments quickly. Thornell, you knew I would try to stop the apocalypse. Oh, do you mean my T-shirt? Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense. Yes, I would totally I would so like to join the BPRD. Unfortunately, my superpower is I can stop my own hiccups, and I don't know if
you are literally like the worst X-Men ever.
I am actually what I am is I'm one of those loser people from Xanth. This is a flashback for the people who know Piers Anthony.
I know
Xanth.
what you're talking about. Yeah.
The idea in Xanth is every person has a magical ability. Every person, but one guy's magical ability is he can pee in different colors. That's it. Other people.
I'll say this:
they can throw
as a dude growing up, I would have totally loved this skill.
That would have been really cool, but it's not really useful beyond entertaining yourself.
No, that would have been very cool.
That would have been very cool. Yes. That's true.
Tell me that you, as a 15-year-old, would not have loved to have this specific power.
I can safely say that, Raf. I can
Yeah.
tell you that.
No. I mean, it's entertaining.
As a
but
15-year-old boy, I think
it's not
that's
going to
important.
save. It's not going to save the world, right? So
It's
I'm
bad.
one of those
It's like
guys.
it's the time when you're proud of like being able to pee your name into snow and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah,
Actually, I
doing
can.
this in
I
different
can.
colors would absolutely rock.
I have two superpowers, which would be totally useless to the BPRD. I can stop my own hiccups immediately, which is actually really, really useful.
I was
but
going to say that's
only
awesome.
to me. Yeah, no, I had a weird experience where I had hiccups at a friend's place, and his wife was a shiatsu master, and she came over behind me and just like with one finger poked somewhere on my back, and my hiccups were gone, like completely, instantly gone. And ever since then, I can disbelieve in hiccups. I
That's pretty
just
good.
I just stop and think about it for a moment, and I stop. My other superpower is I can remember the lyrics to any song I like, and I've heard three or more times. Right, so even songs I haven't heard for like 20 years, it comes on somewhere, and I know the lyrics. It's really weird. The rest of my memory does not work that way at all. I wish it did. But for songs, somehow it
seems like good karaoke skills. Like you can remember the songs, and you'll never hiccup during them.
I don't even have to look at the screen at karaoke.
Right.
Like if I know the song, I can just sing it. You know, it's not a big deal. Morton, hi. Larry buys his shirts that way. He also gets a tour T-shirt. I don't think I even have any more tour T-shirts. I haven't been to a concert where they sell T-shirts in a long time.
I am also wearing a concert shirt at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aslan asks, what's your favorite band? And I think he's talking to you, Raf.
That's a good question. I'm really bad at picking favorite bands. I think like overall the band that has touched me the most, and that's like a very personal thing, would be Manila Road. And that's like very much because Manila Road is one of those bands that like very few people outside of heavy metal know, and even within heavy metal, few people know them. And the main guy passed away a couple of years ago on the way back from a concert that I was at, and he had a heart attack when he left the taxi and went to the hotel, and he passed away in the hotel, and it's incredibly sad.
Yeah.
And it's a band that means a lot to me. Like I've organized a show for them. They were from Wichita, Kansas. Like, and they've been around forever. And I know it's just like a very personal thing for me in that case. Beyond
what about the other two? Tori, favorite band?
Currently, I love. There's an indie folk band called Poor Man's Poison that I'm really into at the moment. When I was younger, oh man, I don't know. I was a big Shinedown fan in high school.
I saw Shinedown as an opening band for Iron Maiden, and it absolutely didn't work because Shinedown worked really well in the US, but they don't work in Germany.
Okay. I know the name, but I don't really know the music.
They're a fascinating band. It's like, it's not my style, but I can recognize like a good singer when he does like good stuff and all of that. But it was just like interesting because you could see he's used to sort of like play in front of like full stadiums in the US, and then now he's like playing in front of like an Iron Maiden audience in Germany who have never heard of him, and he's trying to do the whole like big crowd thing, and he just
that's
like
a hard gig.
bombs.
Yeah. What about you, Brian?
Always and forever, Elton John, because that's why I started playing piano. So I mean, I'm such a classic rock dude, and I mean classic metal, classic rock, classic prog, all of that. So if it was written before, say, 1985, I'm intimately familiar. Post 1986, crapshoot.
Yeah, well, I would be similar, except I have sort of pretensions of being someone that somewhat keeps up with music. It's suffered a lot since I moved away from my friend Doug. My friend Doug used to be my dealer, my music dealer. And we would sit on, he was really into vinyl, even long after vinyl wasn't really a thing much anymore. And we'd always sit on the floor in his flat, and he'd just be like, oh, you got to hear this, you got to hear this, you got to hear this. And every time I visited him, I would discover at least two bands that I liked. So
I'm gonna start sending you music, Matt.
Please.
Because I am also that friend. So.
Yeah, I love getting into new music. I could probably, I imagine, just because of our extremely wide difference in experience, not age, but I mean the kinds of experience we've had, I bet I could also send you a lot of new music. Mm-hmm. So let's definitely do that. Yeah. Jerome buys all his shirts in tourist shops. Jerome, if you don't know, travels a fuck of a lot. If there's a German city where a bearded man with red lipstick wouldn't stick out too much, it's Berlin. Yes, that's true. I've actually seen that in Berlin. Okay. Rose tattoo, metal name. Matt knows all the famous musicians. Do I? I mean, I randomly bumped into Peter Garrett once. I think Brian knows all the famous musicians. I bumped into Peter Garrett once. The Dave Matthews Band and Hootie and the Blowfish used to play in the club I hung out in every Friday night, and I did share beers with them. But they're not bands to be too excited about necessarily.
I have met the keyboarder of Deep Purple once, and I've interviewed him twice, right. Once by phone and once in person. And Don Airey is an
well. I mean, you are actually like super actively involved in music stuff. Like that doesn't surprise me at all.
I book shows, and I have sort of a record label. So yeah,
exactly. I don't have any of those things. I don't think I know all the famous musicians. I'm trying to think of any other famous musicians I know.
I'm trying to think, like in the early, when was it? Probably like mid 90s. I lived in Chicago for like 6 months, and I'm at the Nike store just trying on shoes, and I look at the guy sitting next to me, and it's like, you know, when you're running if you've ever run into a famous person, you sort of do a double take because you're not sure if it's that person or if it's just someone that resembles them. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, I'm sitting here trying on shoes next to Eric Clapton. Okay.
Okay.
And
hi, Eric.
I look at him, I'm like, yeah, those shoes look awesome on you. And he's like, thanks, mate. Da, da, da. And it didn't occur to me that he was in concerts that night in Chicago. You know, okay. He's like, you going to the show tonight? I'm like, I didn't even know you were here.
Is it insulting to say I didn't know you were playing?
Well, I told him I just moved here, which I had. And that's why I went to the Nike store to begin with, because they didn't have one here, and I just wanted to see what it was like.
Sure.
But he's like, oh, you should go. Da, da, da. I'm like waiting for him to say, here's some tickets. That did not happen. But yeah, very cool.
Okay. I ran into Tom Selleck on the street in Honolulu once.
Oh, that's a cool one.
And the funniest thing was, he looked, even in his like being casual mode, not acting mode, he looked exactly like Magnum PI. He looked exactly like Magnum PI. He was wearing like a bright Hawaiian shirt and some shorts and, you know, sunglasses and everything. And I was with my mom. I mean, this was when I was a kid, when people actually knew who Tom Selleck was. And I looked and I said, Mom, that's Tom Selleck. And she was like, no, you're not just going to run into Tom Selleck on the street. And I was like, no, I'm pretty sure it's Tom Selleck. And I actually went over to him and I was like, are you Tom Selleck? He was like, yeah, I am. Sweet. I was like, cool. I can say I met Magnum PI. He said, well,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Definitely a top 3 mustache of all time.
Oh yeah, he defined mustaches for a generation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Quigley Down Under is still one of my favorite westerns.
I love that movie.
Also, good.
People have slept on Quigley Down Under
Amen.
for decades.
It's so good. Yeah.
Hey, Dan. Good to see you, Dan.
Speaking
Morton's
of people that
favorite
I've
band
talked
is
to,
Nine Inch Nails,
and sort of one of my favorite bands, Jethro Tull. I had the opportunity to have an interview with Ian Anderson, and it did not go well.
Well, really? He's weird. Raph's frozen, I think.
He's either reminiscing in the past, and you know
totally
what?
Blanked out right because he's having an Ian Anderson flashback. Wow, Ian Anderson
about Jethro Tull, and then
and then
and he's like Ron Howard to come on and narrate what's his inner monologue right now.
It was very interesting. It just wasn't, very journalistic at the end of the day. It was just like him being angry for like 45 minutes.
Well, yeah, that's as far as anything I've ever heard about him as a person, that's just what he does.
Yeah.
He's always been like that. It's like, well, I like Jethro Tull's music, but I don't think I'd want to have a beer with Ian Anderson.
I'd love to have a beer with him.
But you're also angry.
What I found interesting when we talked about public transport, Ian Anderson does not have a driving license because he says he's too choleric to actually drive cars, so he doesn't have a driving license because he would be constant road rage. So he doesn't want to even get into the temptation, so he doesn't have a driving license.
At least he's self-aware enough to know that and spare the rest of the world from him driving. You know, that's pretty cool.
He's self-aware. He's just like very angry.
Sure.
There
you go. There you go, Tori. Someone else who knows Poor Man's Poison.
Mm-hmm.
Raph, if you're a big Jethro Tull guy, a really good friend of mine, and his band are now the band for Al Stewart, and they've been the band for Al Stewart for like the last 5 or 6 years, and they just went and had dinner with Martin Barr not that long ago. Yeah. And he said that Martin Barr is absolutely the most. Anybody who doesn't know, he's one of the best guitar players in classic rock of all time. Played with Jethro Tull forever, but said he's like
one of the most patient guys ever because he's stuck with Ian Anderson for so many years.
Yeah, he said he's like everything you would ever dream in meeting one of your guitar heroes. Yeah. Just gracious and cool and wanted to know about you.
You'd have to be working with Ian Anderson for that.
Yeah.
Evie, you dodged a bullet. Well done. Thank you for at least saying hi. You are still on my good side. Don't worry. Oh, that's right. No, yeah. She's talking about, because she's Danish. Ida is Danish. And the AC/DC of Denmark is called Gasoline. And I know very well, like really good friend, their main sound guy. So he was never on stage. He just carried shit for them. But through him, I met one of the members of the band, and I was at the most famous members of the band house. He wasn't there. Kim Larsen. He wasn't there. But I've been in his house. They bought. It's actually such a cute story in a way for a rock band. They were quite successful, and they bought a row or a very narrow building that was built like in the 16th century on a canal in Copenhagen together. The band bought the entire building, and each one of them lived in one of the flats until that sort of inevitably broke down, because just because you're in a band with people doesn't mean you should live with them. But they were very close, but they had some fallings out, and some of the people moved out and whatever. But I've been in Kim Larsen's house. Yes, that's true.
Cool.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. I feel like my favorite, like, Denmark has a lot of like bands, like big bands in a lot of ways. Like Gasoline are not like well known, like, but international bands. Denmark has punched above its weight when it comes to like country size versus popularity of international bands. Like,
yeah, and also design. I mean, nobody probably knows very much about design, not being designers, but like Danish design is stunningly good. Like the first time I ever went to Copenhagen, I was walking through the streets in Copenhagen, looking at signs on small shops.
Yeah.
And I was like, how can the typography be right? Like not just right, but like elegant and just perfect. Like the kerning, the space between the letters is even exactly the way it should be on a tiny shop, like a tobacconist or something, Yeah. And like walking around in Copenhagen as a designer is just heaven. It's gorgeous. There are so many beautifully designed things all over the place. It's really cool.
I feel not my favorite Danish band, but the one that has certainly I've had the most fun with live was certainly DAD from Denmark, which are sort of like a punk country whatever band.
Punk country, okay.
It's weird. It's like they have sort of like a very US style in it, but they're sort of punky and other stuff. And the biggest hit was "Sleeping My Day Away" from like 1991 or whatever.
Colton, I have a story about grunge in the 90s. I was at home. I mean, in the 90s, I was in my 20s or something. I was at home. And back then, one of the big things in music, which I don't think anyone cares about anymore, is MTV, right? And a friend of mine called me on the landline because we didn't have mobile phones. So my phone rang, I answered it, and my best friend said, "Turn on MTV." And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Shut up and turn on MTV." And it was Nirvana. And he and I had been complaining. We'd been listening to rap and punk music or really old music because 80s music was such garbage. And in general, there are some 80s bands I don't mind, but like listening to Duran Duran and Flock of Fucking Seagulls forever is just like you want to shoot yourself in the face. And he called me and said, "Turn on MTV." It was Nirvana. And I was like, "Oh my God, what is this? Who are these guys? Why are they playing music that's like so much better than everything we've been listening to for a decade?" Yeah. So
the one grunge album that everyone needs to listen to and way too few people listen to is Temple of the Dog.
Also, yes, absolutely. Oh, okay. So Raph said DOD, and I had no idea what it was, and it's Disneyland After Dark, which I actually have heard of, but don't know anything about. Internet killed the MTV star. Yes, it did, which is not bad. I mean, I've thought about that a lot because I lived through all of it. Like when I was growing up, vinyl was the thing, and then it was CDs, which was just smaller vinyl and a new device you had to buy. And then in the early 90s, when
I still buy vinyl.
Sure, some people do, but it's weird, right? Like you're not mainstream if you're buying vinyl, right? I have a lot of friends. I have one friend. The first time I went to his house, he had like, I don't know, meters and meters. He just had shelves and shelves full of vinyl, but he's a DJ and he's also weird. Yeah. But like iTunes came out and I was like, oh my God, they just broke the album. Like the whole idea that to get music, you had to get a package which had a bunch of stuff in it. And all of a sudden you could say, I want that song and I don't want to pay very much for it. And that's okay. And buy just that song. And that was a revolution. It was insane. It's normal now. Nobody thinks about it. Kids these days. But back in the day, it was like, I never imagined this was possible except with pirating, which is what we were all doing back then to get the stuff we wanted.
I'm glad that we made it 27 minutes into it before we got a kids these days.
Yeah, kids these days. Yeah, with you and I on here, like half an hour without a kids these days is actually pretty
right. I mean, that's an accomplishment. By the way, Tori, you look fantastic today.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. I was telling Matt I got poshed up a little bit today. I do this like twice a year just to prove that I can.
Yeah, I was thinking about giving you that same compliment, and then I thought, like, if a blind guy tells you that you look fabulous,
hey, I'll take it. I'll take it. Thanks, Raph.
All that means,
Raph, you look fabulous as well. So yeah.
all it means, Raph, if you tell her that she looks fabulous.
I came home at 5 a.m. this morning. I'm a wreck today.
Well, considering that, you look great. If you tell Tori she looks good, it just means that you trust Brian and me a lot. We're seeing for you.
Have faith.
I'm an incredibly trusting person. I'm trusting, not trustworthy. There's an important distinction there.
Dan, if that's, I'm so sorry because you're watching the wrong artists. If that's the case, like I can send you some killer music videos.
Yeah, but it's not. I think it's still not like it was because now, like the way all of these commodities like music work. And also series and movies and all of that is everybody chooses, right? Everything is choice now. We have choice. We have a million different choices. Mm-hmm. And there are certain things I will never discover unless I actively go and know what I'm looking for and call it, and I search for it. And it used to be you could turn on MTV and it wasn't always good music, but you would just get a whole bunch of music and they had particular shows, like they had a rap show. So if you wanted to watch rap, you could watch that. And then they had late night shows where they'd play less mainstream stuff and more obscure things.
The thing when they had to play like the Prodigy videos after midnight because they were not safe for work and everything.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, you could basically just turn it on, have it on in the background.
Yeah.
And every now and then you would hear something and go over and look at it and you discover amazing videos, amazing music just sort of by accident. And that's really you have to search for that now. You know, that sort of randomness.
I want to say, Martin, you're right. Vinyl has been cool for a long time. As someone who has way too many vinyls from like bands that they, for whatever reason, decided to publish in his flat, I totally agree. Get more vinyl. Specifically, buy vinyl from me.
I think cool is too mainstream to say that vinyl is cool. Like, I'd say vinyl is hipster. Which is much smaller.
I think it was. I think now, especially,
it's becoming cool again.
In like the younger millennial top of Gen Z is starting to come back to vinyl quite a bit. Yeah,
that shows how cool I am.
Very much like a pandemic thing is that like once everyone is stuck at home and everyone's like, well, I guess I can also listen to like vinyl and all the it was a huge problem because like suddenly like Universal and all the big labels suddenly ordered like massive reprints of like all like their back catalogs on vinyl because they thought
people were actually buying it again. Okay,
which is when like the small like DIY labels and stuff like where I'm at, right, suddenly had to wait for like 6 months for like vinyl pressing because obviously if Universal orders like 10,000 copies of a Madonna album, that's going to take priority at the pressing factory, and there's like 5 or 6 actual pressing factories for vinyl in the world because they all got dismantled in the 90s because no one was buying vinyl. So suddenly the people that had been supporting vinyl throughout the 80s, throughout the 90s, throughout the early 2000s and so forth were sort of pushed aside because big business decided to also do vinyl again, and that was like really annoying. And I waited for like 9 months for like a vinyl pressing, and that was like
the paper crisis during the pandemic as well. I mean, different reasons, obviously, but I do miss good music videos. Like it's not something I look for at all on YouTube. But there was a real sort of short film art about it.
Mm-hmm.
When, I mean, most music videos back in the day, and probably still now, were just kind of garbage. Like a lot of them were
lip sync fake concert.
Yeah, and they're just kind of doing the same thing, and there wasn't anything particularly exciting or creative about it. But every now and then a music video came up where I was like, "Oh, this is actually an amazing short film."
Yeah,
the best music video ever.
Peter Gabriel.
The best music video ever recorded is Manowar's "Secrets of Steel." It's Gloves of Metal. The Gloves of Metal video by Manowar is incredible. It's like 5 dudes that have just seen Conan the Barbarian and want to do the same thing, and it's in all its glory. It's insane. It's objectively bad, but it's the kind of bad you could get away.
Kind of good. I get it.
They're barbarians raiding this village, and they're just like taking all the women, throwing them over the backs of their ponies, and riding away afterwards. It's insanely sexist. It's insanely badly produced. It's everything in this video is wrong, but the fact that you can actually do this in the 1980s is sort of like what makes it good. It's like, wow, someone could do this and get away with it.
Darko makes a good point. Like for music video history, Michael Jackson was really one of the big turning points. Like, I mean, you look at him now, it's just like if you watch any series from the 80s or 90s or something now, it looks cheesy, but like Thriller
was a big deal.
Insane.
Yeah,
like the first time I saw that, I was like, what? Yeah, it's such an amazing video.
And to have Beat It and Billie Jean also on that album, all with videos.
Well, that album also is just like stunning.
Yeah.
Like there isn't really.
But every video that he came off that came off that record was just an MTV gold. That was really the height of MTV, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was actually using video as a tool, right? Like a lot of like rock bands just do like cool posing shots when they're playing guitar and shit, and they're like,
he was actually telling stories with the
medium.
Yeah,
that's not exactly using the medium,
amplifying, so to speak, his musical story with a visual story. Yeah.
Yes, I would once again Smack My Bitch Up from The Prodigy was an incredible video.
Absolutely,
the way it was done.
And I don't necessarily like the sound of the lyrics, but I love that song. I mean, it's as far as energy goes, that's a very high energy song.
Yeah, like I have problems with the lyrics and problems with like all kinds of stuff around the project, but like
sure,
as a video, as an art project, it was incredibly well done.
It was a good video, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
How good was Dire Straits' Money for Nothing?
Also, yes.
Yeah.
Dire Straits, man, I haven't thought of them in a while, but they were also one of my 80s favorites. Because they were actually making music that was music in the 80s.
Right.
It wasn't just poppy bubblegum, you know. They were actually playing instruments and singing well and writing lyrics.
One of the greatest guitar players ever, and he should be a household name. It drives me nuts that only people that are into music know who Mark Knopfler is, but God, that guy's so good.
Well, he's the guy who has this very specific sound, and it's like you can tell Mark Knopfler when he plays guitar. It's like it takes like, I don't know, 2 chords, and I'm like, yeah, this is Mark Knopfler.
That's it. Yeah.
That's that atmospheric, it almost sounds like weather or something in Brothers in Arms, like the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
That like you hear something like that, and it's like, yeah, it's got to be Mark Knopfler.
Mm-hmm.
It's an amazing,
which is also like the most German name I've ever heard.
It's a very German name. Yes, that's true.
German name.
Darko says, "Oh my God, thank you, Raph. A Prodigy melody has been stuck in my head for weeks, and I could not remember the artist or title of the song." So yeah, they've got some extremely catchy stuff. Whether you're into their whole vibe or not, they've definitely got some extremely catchy music. Aslan thinks that this is a channel that has something to do with reading or something.
Nah, reading's for suckers. We don't do that around here.
What are you people reading? I am reading still The Stone of Farewell, because when I went away, which is the reason we didn't have a Sunday pub 2 weeks ago, I was actually away for a week, and I had it in my room, and like I'd go to bed.
How was cracking?
I'd usually drunk a little, and I was tired because I've been talking to people all day, and I'd open this and read like a page and a half and collapse. So I didn't read for a week, and since I've been back, I've been very focused on other things that Raph and I could probably talk about for years, but nobody else is interested in, role-playing games. So I haven't been reading that much, but I'm about a third of the way through it, and it's slower. I mean, it's not bad by any means, but it's slower than the first one. The first one grabbed me more, and this one,
which is saying a lot, because the first one is already, not exactly fast.
I don't know. I'm still not quite sure what it was, but what I think it is there's a hard thing to do. At least I assume. Tori can tell me, because she's actually an author. I assume it's a hard thing to do as an author, to write about lots of different people in lots of different places doing lots of different things and keep all of those bits engaging.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Obvious. Yeah. And George R.R. Martin, I think, manages it better than anyone I've read. Although Erickson's also pretty damn good at it. But there are also some of the storylines in Erickson's in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I'm just like, I don't really care that much about this particular bit. Can we get back to the cool shit?
Well, and I think it's a fine balance, because, one of the positives of having a multi-POV story is that you have more characters for your readers to relate to and invest in. Right. But the other side of that is there's naturally going to be a character that, is going to work for one person, but not the other. And you're not going to be as invested in all of them usually.
I think like what George R. Martin does and why it works so well, and he was like the first one to just like separate POVs by name and just do nothing else, right? Like the chapters are just like the name of the POV, and you just like get their view for like one chapter, and then you move to the next one,
which is really annoying in a read along.
Yeah, it makes it very
really
easy for a reader to attach to that, right? You kind of know what you're getting in for the next chapter, and you can switch. And Erickson doesn't do that, right? Erickson just like switches in mid chapter and whatever, and suddenly you're like in a different head, and you're like, oh fuck, what happens now?
Yeah, Robin Hobb, Darko San did it really well in Live Ship, and totally.
Yes,
there were pretty much no bits in Live Ship where I was like, this is boring. Give me the other guys back. I
will once again say,
I know, Tori, you've got we've talked about it quite a lot.
Well, Tori was bored. I mean,
No, I wasn't necessarily bored. There are a few sections
just like,
where
I want this bit to stop. Take me
I'm
back.
like,
to the
I'm
other
over
bit.
it. Yeah.
I still have to reread Live Ship because I read it like a decade ago, and I have to go back to it. And like the one thing that is stuck in my, there's two things that have stuck in my mind with Live Ship. I think it's brilliant. I think Kyle, as much as everyone hates him, is probably one of the best portrayals of toxic masculinity under like patriarchy that I've seen. Because
it's not although everyone hates him, it's like that is why everyone hates him. Like,
yeah, but most people go like, what a dickhead. It's like, yeah, but like step back and realize how much of Kyle do you actually also do? Because that's like the
I think part, most right? I think pretty much every Hobb fan I've ever spoken to would simultaneously say Kyle is insanely well written and the biggest dick in fantasy ever. You know, like he's
but
just
it's systemic, and I'm that dick. I have been very Kyle-ish in my life in the past, and I get it. And the other part that has stuck with me is, of course, the rape scene in the last book, where I'm like, okay, maybe I'll understand it better now, but back then I was like, why?
Yeah,
why?
That without getting too deep into it because it's spoilers. That scene is hard to understand. It's like I keep going back and forth on it. It's one of those things where I'm like, I keep thinking, did that really need to be in the book? Did that really need to happen? And then on the other side, I'm like, well, if it didn't, then there's some things that wouldn't hit nearly as hard, both on the positive and negative side, that happened after it. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, just last thing on the book I'm reading. Daniel says Tad Williams just hops in between. All of them seemingly at random, which is part of my problem right now. Is I think he's jumping a lot faster between different things and different people and different things going on in different places. But there's still, he's doing a weird thing. He's mixing George R.R. Martin and Tolkien in a way. It feels like a mix of both. And in Tolkien, there is a clear...
he's kind of the bridge between those two.
Yeah, right? Sure, totally. But in Tolkien, there is a really clear main thing that's happening that you are meant to care about. And in George R.R. Martin, there are a million things happening, and none of them is the main thing. You know, they're all sort of jumping around all over the place. This one, there is a main thing that's happening, and he's jumping around to things that are not that thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of... I don't know. It's somewhat challenging for me. I'm just reading it slowly. I'm not giving up. What are you other people reading?
I am rereading Desolation Road by Ian MacDonald, not the Crimson.
Not the guy in Crimson
guy.
Yeah.
Now, Ian MacDonald is one of those authors that I've loved for a long time. And last week, I'm like, fuck it, no one talks about this man. I'm gonna go through all his books in publication order. I'm gonna make five people will watch it because someone has to, right? So I'm rereading his first novel, which is Desolation Road, and it's basically 100 years of solitude on Mars, and it's really good. It's incredibly powerful. As a debut novel, it's fantastic.
Just as a very, very, very short pitch, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
100 Years of Solitude is an amazing book, and On Mars makes it sound even cooler.
It's like, now that I've finally actually read 100 Years of Solitude, which I read last week, because I'm like, this time around I'm going to read the other book so I can actually, contextualize stuff. And I'm like, yeah, he actually pulls it off, and that's impressive for like a debut novel, right?
Cool. Tori, what are you reading?
Well, I'm on my...
Go ahead.
I'm on my last TBR takeover book that Brian picked for me, which is Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. I just started it, so I'm literally like 10 pages in. And I was expecting... Yeah, I was expecting classic Chosen One epic fantasy. And literally in the first page of chapter 1, we have a young boy who's practicing sword forms for the proving. And I was like, yep, here we go. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have strong opinions about it so far because I'm 10 pages in, but
Not like Philip Chase, who introduces someone on the first page who you think, oh, okay, this is the guy we're going to be. Oh, sorry, he's dead. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who are we following?
Yeah.
Well, I also think that, I mean, one of the reasons that I recommended that for Tori is, Tori, you have not read Wheel of Time, right?
No.
So, and that's good.
Lucky you.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's
I never will, probably.
Because
Don't.
a lot of people jump into the book you're reading right now and say, oh, book one is very derivative of Wheel of Time, but
sure.
You're not going to run into that, which is
how can anything be derivative of Wheel of Time, which is like so derivative of Tolkien?
Now that it's not that derivative of Tolkien, though.
Oh, the first book is.
It kind yeah.
The first book.
He is me doing the white man thing where I mansplain why people think that Ryan Cahill gets compared to Wheel of Time. I've heard the word sword forms, and Wheel of Time is big on sword forms, and that's people when make weird connections like, oh, it's got sword forms that have names. I guess it's the same thing, which
or like every martial art ever.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Like all of my Asian-inspired fantasy books on my shelf.
I used to do various martial arts, and all of them are like that, you know?
Yeah.
Which is why I really am waiting for you to finally read By Force Alone, because there's a incredibly good knight, Sir Lancelot, who does very specific Jewish martial arts which have like incredibly cool names for their forms.
Jewish
Krav Maga.
Okay.
Krav Maga.
No. He uses like Salomon's parting of the child as a martial arts thing. Also, the killing of the screw and the monkey's paw, and it's incredibly funny. But it only works if you understand what he's doing.
Right. And what are you reading, Brian?
I am, according to Kindle, 45 minutes away from completing my 5th SPFBO book for Team Chase. Nice. And it's called The Torn Veil. It's actually pretty decent. So I've got one more book in SPFBO to read, which is going to happen after I finish this one. Later today, I'm starting Ordinary Grace, which, yeah, you know, me and Philip and John and Mike are all reading that one for book clubs. So we'll see. Those guys have already all started it, and they're real high on it. So hopefully I am as well. And that's going to take me out of, you know, the fantasy realm for a minute before I dive headfirst into Memories of Ice.
I have to read this comment out because it's hilarious. I remember DNFing 100 Years of Solitude because it felt like 100 Years of Solitude. Yeah, I didn't DNF it. I read it a long time ago, but I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I can understand that from what I remember. It's not a super fast book. It's not a super action-y book, but it's an interesting story, I thought. Speaking of reading, I actually really wanted to do sprints because I've been reading this book so slowly and like having some specific time to actually do some reading seemed like a good idea. Is everyone up for sprints?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. If I'm back on, that means I stayed at my house. If I'm back only in chat, that means I went over to my folks' house. And I'm reading outside there, and I'll be on my phone in chat.
No worries.
Gonna give them a call and see what my plan here is today while they're in town.
Let's do half an hour-ish. So 20 past. And enjoy your reading. And remember to turn your microphone off.
I will.
Cool.
Hello. How's everyone's book?
Hello. I did not read because I couldn't concentrate. No, I just I like 2 days ago I shared my video on Blackheart Man on Blue Sky, and in this break I found out that Nalo Hopkinson actually re-Blue Skyed, whatever you want to call it, the post goes like, watching the video now I'm scared, and the first person liking that post was Nidi Okorafor, and I'm like, fuck. All the smart people are now having eyes on me bumbling my way through like something I completely don't understand. Now I'm having like panic attacks and shit.
Cool. Panic attacks are fun.
Yeah. I mean, on the other hand, it's really cool that apparently me being the only person talking about Nalo Hopkinson on YouTube kind of gets the author actually excited. So I'm happy about that.
Sure.
I'm also scared because that's one incredibly smart person.
Rogue is also reading Stone of Farewell, but only one chapter in. I don't know what chapter I'm up to. I just made it into another chapter. I'm on reading chapter 10 right now. It's not too far ahead of you. And it's not bad. It's just, it's not grabbing me somehow in the same way that the first book did. Colton is reading Sword of Kaigen. Nice. Yeah, I've got that one on my list. So many people I respect say it's really good.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Which one?
Colton also says Sword of Kaigen.
I have avoided that one because everyone says it's good.
As usual, I am not surprised.
Hey, don't tell Evie, but I've read Spear Cut Through Water. I've just not talked about it.
My God. What did you think?
I kept it a secret. I just like read it and told no one about it.
As you should. As you should. We wouldn't want anyone to think that you are not a curmudgeon. Darko is loving Jade War. Greenbane Saga. Yeah. I'm mixed. I probably should read the last one. I always forget which ones are which, but
Jade Legacy.
Jade City, Jade War, Jade Legacy. Yeah. Jade War to me felt mostly like a whole bunch of people sitting around and talking and not doing much.
I think one of the things with Jade War is that a lot of people go into that assuming that it's a like physical, like armies and battles kind of war. And there's a little bit of that in there, but I think I also had a hard time with it because of the expectation I had going into it. But looking back, I actually love that she was digging into the side of war that's actually like a lot of people don't talk about, is all of the people sitting in rooms and making decisions and the economy and of all of that. And I thought that it was hard. It was slower than Jade City for sure, but
I think it wasn't so much the title that I was expecting, like an action-packed war. I think it was just more that the first book was much more action-packed and a lot less talky. Changes. And the pacing is totally different. And I don't know. I just found myself like, I can read Robin Hobb with two people in a room talking for 200 pages and I'm totally into it. Mm-hmm. But I found I had a hard time caring about a lot of the conversations in Jade War. And
it's my least favorite of the three. So like, yeah, I agree to some degree. But
hello.
I haven't read Jade War, so I don't. I do want to next year, though. It actually sounds like, how often, guys, do you hear about a fantasy gang war? I'm like, I'm sold. I want to read about that.
Not that often. That's
like
true.
A fantasy gangster epic.
The basic setup, like Asian family gangs, territory and turf, and this interesting magic idea. I was like, in the first book, I was totally into it. I raced through Jade whatever really city quickly. I actually quite enjoyed it, and I went straight into Jade War, and then I was like, oh, everyone's just talking a lot about things I'm not that excited about. Okay, and I DNF'd it. I'm afraid, and it kind of put me off of continuing. But I've heard that Legacy then isn't like Jade War and becomes more exciting, and some of the action comes back in and all that kind of stuff. So I maybe should just go on to Legacy. And Daniel's also reading Stone of Farewell very slowly.
Tori, didn't the Jade series make you tear up?
I think I bawled at the end of Jade Legacy.
Oh, that's what I thought. I remember. I'm like, I saw a video where you were reading one of those books, and like you were in tears.
Yep, that was the last one. Well, and Jade City. So, without spoilers for anyone who hasn't read Greenbone yet, there's a very specific event that anyone who's read it will know about the middle of the first book. That, like, I always appreciate when an author is just willing to do the twist that nobody is like, oh, they'd never do that, and then they do, and it works, but you hate it at the same time. And that's still been one of the most like heavy hitting fantasy moments in one of the hardest hitting fantasy moments for me at this point.
I didn't I don't think I related quite as strongly as you did to the character in the first book. So that event didn't hit that hard, but it did surprise me. It was one of those moments where you're like, really?
She just did that.
You're doing that?
Yeah.
We're going there?
Okay. Yep.
Hi, Matt, the other Matt, other of many, many numerous Matts on BookTube.
There's way too many Matts on BookTube.
Yeah, exactly. We should all invent code names for ourselves or something to distinguish between.
Just go by your last names.
Yeah, exactly. I did in school. I mean, when I was in Catholic boys' school.
You have a very like fantasy-esque last name, so I feel like it would work.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's probably because it's made up. It was actually invented by an immigration officer
on
in
books
America.
Is not your last name?
No, on books is not my last name, but it is what Balara means. My actual last name was invented by an immigration officer in America. When my
it's family... one of those like we're gonna take your name that you just told me and turn it into something that is way easier to spell and
not even that. But my family was from Puerto Rico and didn't speak English, and the immigration officer didn't speak Spanish. So when they came in, and my great grandfather, I think it was my great grandfather, when he said Bayala, they wrote down Balara. And for many years, that just was our name, and we didn't know it, or it was their name. I wasn't alive, but it was their name, and they didn't know it. Because in the Puerto Rican community, everybody called them by the correct name, and eventually they realized that they'd officially been put down with the wrong name and just left it. Which actually is probably not a bad thing, because Balara, everybody who hears it can't imagine how to spell it and pronounces it then wrong and so on. But it's a lot better than Bayala, which is 2 L's pronounced as a Y, as in Spanish. So that would be really, really difficult. Whereas Balara is only slightly difficult. But Samwise is here, finishing up Ash's Man. Cool. And then going to Death Masks. Some Dresden. Cool.
I want to call out Osa for actually reading Stonewielder, which is really good.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a good book, and people don't realize how incredibly well done it is. When Esselmont really hits his stride is with Stonewielder. I'm nowhere near Stonewielder, but I'm doing the ultimate reading order that somebody came up with. And I think, if I remember correctly, I just finished Reaper's Gale, and if I remember correctly, the next one for me should be Crimson Guard. Ooh, yeah.
I think.
You'll learn about stuff.
Back to Book of the Fallen, and then so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it. That's finally getting to some Esselmont. I read Knight of Knives, but that's so short, and it's not bad. But
is that a reference to that thing that those people, we probably can't say in Germany, did back in the 30s?
I do believe it might be a reference to what we in Germany call fucking Nazis.
Yes. Yes. Or, I mean, could also be much older. I don't want y'all to
be banned in Germany. I was trying to be conscientious there, man.
No.
Could also
here's the
be
deal.
a
You
much,
can talk about
older
everything in
to
Germany. There's
Julius Caesar.
Okay. You can talk about everything you can in Germany. There's symbols you're not allowed to use, which are, the swastika and the SS death head and stuff like that. Those symbols are banned from use because if you kind of use them outside of like an educational context, which is still, where you can use them, that's sort of you're very much signaling that you're not okay with the Constitution, and being unconstitutional is illegal in Germany.
Yeah. I have to pull up Morton's comment, because if you like the idea of fantasy gangsters, read War for the Rose Throne. That is the awesomest fantasy gangster series that I've read.
I've heard mixed things about it. I've heard people go, really? Man, this is great, and then I've heard other people go, wow, this is dumpster fire. I DNF'd. And I'm like, oh boy.
What? I can't even begin to imagine that.
I didn't love the last book.
Yeah, it shifts.
Yeah,
it shifts a lot.
Kind of pulled an Abercrombie at the end of the last book, and I was like, no.
Yeah. But it's overall, I thought it was just so good. I mean, it's much more of a straight traditional European fantasy, so it doesn't have the interestingness of the Jade books, the Greenbone books.
It is one of the best like first person voice stylistic choices I've ever seen, because I'm a big believer in the fact that most first person narration doesn't work because it's not the right character. Like you have to have a very specific character voice to make it more than just a vehicle for narration.
And I think that's also what made the audiobooks so good.
Yes.
The I forget the narrator's name, unfortunately.
I can't remember
which one?
Yeah,
Lee something.
Yeah, I remember reading The Black Tongue Thief, and that was a problem. I didn't really like the character voice in that.
The audiobook, like the guy who narrates the book.
For which book?
Priest of Lies, or Priest of Gallows, or Priest of stuff.
Crowns is the last one.
Priest of Crowns and Priest
of... I think that starts with like the Priest of Bones or what?
Bones is the first one. Yeah.
Priest of Bones, yeah. Yeah, it's such a fitting voice for the character, because like it's a rich but kind of rough man's voice. It's a bit of an older guy.
Oh, it's John Lee.
John Lee. Yeah. Really, really good voice for that character in particular.
He's like one of the first audiobook narrators I've ever listened to, like on like digital audiobooks, because he does all the old Alistair Reynolds stuff as well.
Okay.
And Chasm City was like, I think, the first audiobook I bought on Audible. So I'm very much tied to John Lee. He also does the 100 Years of Solitude audiobook. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
No,
I
really
think
good.
I would almost prefer to hear a narrator with a Spanish accent for those.
Yes. Yeah. Totally get it. I was like, that's the thing. Is like, I was like, do I get like a German translation or an English translation of the audiobook? And I'm like, I settled on the English
I would like to hear Antonio Banderas narrate.
That would be fun.
Narrate 100 Years.
Talk about Jose Arcadio Buendera, the whatever.
Yeah, exactly. People are dissing Jade, the Greenbone covers. I can understand that. They're pretty boring covers. They're just typography, really.
A little basic.
At least the American covers. I don't know if the UK covers are any different, actually. And Rogue says, I told him to steer clear of Greenbone. It may have been because I was very disappointed in the second book. It literally bored me out of reading it at one point. I read quite a lot of it. I DNF'd at like 75%. You know, I was really trying, but then I realized that I was having to try so hard to stay engaged, and I just wasn't. And yeah, yeah.
I feel like I have to jump in there.
I see what Darko is referring to. He's referring to that
I
event
did too.
in the first book of Greenbone. Yeah.
Okay. Samwise. Malazan does not compare to Book of the New Sun. It's a very different beast.
Where is Samwise's comment?
It's incredibly easy to read.
If maybe we can do a buddy read when I read Gardens of the Moon next year.
The difficulty of those two different books. First of all, I would say that if you are a relaxed person, they're not difficult. I think the difficulty is overblown. The thing about Malazan, the thing they share, which can be difficult for some people, is you don't always know exactly what's going on.
And you just have to be kind of okay with that.
And you just have to kind of roll with it. Yeah. You know, if you can't deal with not knowing exactly what's going on and having it explained to you in detail, then they are both difficult. The other thing that may be difficult for some people in Malazan is there are lots and lots of characters, and you can either roll with that and just forget people sometimes, and you'll be reminded later.
Yeah.
Or you can refer to things like the wiki, which is pretty good about avoiding spoilers, or there's a list of all the characters in the book. So, you know,
character list on Wikipedia is actually really good because it kind of lists all the characters alphabetically, and it tells you in which book they show up. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. If I ever want to understand spelling of characters, which, you know, is kind of difficult with Malazan, that's where I go to. Is like
reading the rest of your comment, though. You're a huge Gene Wolfe fan, but reading something as long and dense as Malazan intimidates you a lot. Like if you love Book of the New Sun, shut up and read Malazan. Like it's ridiculous for someone who loves Book of the New Sun to think Malazan is intimidating.
Wolfe's writing style is a lot more abstract as well in terms of like the reading experience. Malazan is far more grounded than Gene Wolfe, so it's not as hard as people make it sound like.
No, it's not nearly. Actually,
it's just like Carlos pretending to be intelligent.
Carlos like from StoryTube did a really cool video recently called "Malazan's Not Difficult, It's Different," and he explains it in a very straightforward way because he's a new Malazan fan who's up to I think the 4th book now and is loving it. And he explains in a really, I think, straightforward and encouraging way why Malazan isn't actually difficult. It's just not like every other fantasy thing you've read, you know. And and it's really the main thing. I think the best advice is just to be relaxed about it and just to roll with what's going on and trust that Steve will get you there. You know, that he may not lay everything out really obviously, but if you like Book of the New Sun, you don't need that, obviously. Like that's not a requirement for you. I would absolutely recommend that you read it because it's the best fantasy I've ever read. So, and the other question though,
it may not be the best I've ever read, but it's certainly a really good one.
You have the first 5 Malazan on audio. Is it even understandable that way? I haven't listened to it. Just imagining it, I would recommend you read it with your eyeballs. Because there are a lot of names. There are a lot of...
Well, and the audiobooks as well.
I've heard they're not
From what I understand, the narrators did not consult with Erickson at all in terms of pronunciation.
The pronunciation is wrong in a lot of places.
It's very wrong, which, like, you know, for some people is really neither here nor there. But yeah, I would highly. Malazan is a better eyeball read, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna duck out. I've got family over, so I'm gonna go hang out with them. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming by. Good to see you.
Good to see everybody.
See you later.
See you later.
Yes, Brian is absolutely correct. The best sword name ever, including Excalibur, I would say, is Terminus Est. This is the end, or this
Terminus
is
is definitely
line.
the best. Yes. Samwise, as someone who has only listened to the audiobooks of Malazan, I can tell you that those are actually, they're good. They're fine. The switch narrator after book 3 is kind of jarring.
Yeah.
But
I was angry at Erickson.
Why are you angry at Erickson? He didn't pick the narrators.
No. Even reading it. I'm trying to remember after book 3. No, that's House of Chains. I was angry at him at the beginning of Midnight Tides.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, so book 4, like House of Chains is like when they switch the narrator. They have like one for the first 3 novels who's a very gravelly kind of guy. And then they have Michael Page, who does a ton of books. And it's like he did like the Gentleman Bastard stuff. He does the 7 of the Malazan books. He does he did some of the First Law stuff, and then people got really mad at like Joe Abercrombie for switching the narrator after Stephen Pacey to like a different person, so they re-recorded everything with Stephen Pacey. So I'm one of the few people who actually still owns the Michael Page thing because I bought it on like a physical audio like MP3 CD.
Right.
He does a lot of stuff, and
yeah, I think the Malazan audio, like if you don't have to listen to audio, if you're not blind, like our friend Raf, I recommend reading it, because I also, especially the first time, I'm working on my first reread now, but the first time I read Malazan, there were often bits where I found myself flipping back a page and rereading a little bit. And of course you can do that on audio, but it's a lot clumsier.
It's a different narrator for the Carcarnas audiobooks. That's someone else whose name I don't remember.
Yeah, this is always a funny thing. I mean, of course, when you read a book with your eyes, you come up with your own pronunciation. I mean, especially fantasy, where there's so many invented words. You come up with your own pronunciation, and I don't want to tell anyone that their pronunciation is wrong ever about what they made up in their own head while they were visually reading a book, except Malazan is pronounced Malazan. That one I'll stick to because it's an adjective. But other than that, pronounce anything any way you want. But it is pretty disappointing. Of course, there is I guess, official pronunciation, like the way the author pronounces the things, but he also doesn't care. But I would love for audiobook companies to actually check with the author before giving the book to someone who's meant to read it out loud. And check and at least get the author's pronunciation. You know,
I have views on audiobooks, and I'll talk about it in a second. I'll just have to do the thing because this is like a self-serve pub, so I have to go to the fridge for a second.
Oh, damn. That sucks.
Yeah, it's bad.
Well, I guess it's just you and me right now, Matt.
It is.
How have you been, man? I heard you had a
plug. Yeah, I was a bit
feeling better.
Yeah. Everything's much better. I came away from my week away with a cold, a really horrible cold.
So your health just decided to beat you up a little bit.
I spent a week in one building with 60 people, so like it's not very surprising. And I was drinking a lot and staying up way too late. So
as you do,
pretty much every day for a week. So it's not too surprising coming away from that being a bit knocked out, worn down. It happens to me pretty much every time. Like I go to this thing once to 3 times a year,
Yeah, it's like you hang out with a bunch of people, you're gonna catch something.
Yeah, especially if your like system is almost always full of alcohol and you're staying up until 3 a.m. every night.
You don't sleep. You're behaving unhealthy.
Yeah.
And then
exactly. But it was awesome. In spite of being a bit sick when I came away, it was awesome. Really enjoyed it.
I really want to go to Kraken at some point. I just like right now it's too expensive.
It is for a role-playing convention. It is expensive because Fabi, the guy who organizes it, Fabian, the idea has always been that it's an alternative to the way a lot of gaming conventions are.
Yeah.
Namely, it's in a really nice place, which is really peaceful and green, and it's in a really nice building, and you stay there, you sleep there, you get your meals, the food's really good, you get all you can drink, booze and whatever else you want to drink. So of course that costs money. Fabian's definitely not getting rich on it.
First, I'm just saying it's beyond my means.
Yeah. No. Totally understandable.
Especially because, like, me being me and being blind means I can't go there alone. I have to make sure that at least one other person that I know is there to sort of like make sure that I, find a hostel room and shit like that, which means either I already know someone who's going to Kraken or something, or I have to basically find someone who also wants to go there, and then pay doubles basically.
You do know someone who's going to Kraken, but I'm not taking a train 6 hours to pick you up. Sorry.
Oh, no. I can do all of that on my own. It's just, at the place kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I am pretty much always there. So if you want to come and you've got the money, then I could certainly help you get settled in and find your way around and all that sort of stuff. That's easy. Yeah. No problem.
Well, maybe next time or the time after or whatever. We'll see.
Yeah.
But like, I have way too many Chaosium products and way too many Pelgrane products in books in my shelves at this point.
Yeah. It's really weird. Like, I'm not that into Pelgrane or Chaosium, but I know all of the main people who work at Chaosium. I know Robin Laws. I know a lot of big people in the RPG industry. I'd
love to hang out with Robin D. Laws because
Robin Laws is very cool. Extremely dry humor.
I've listened to his podcast he did with Kenneth Hyde for like ages, and I'm like,
me too.
I feel like I have things that I would like to talk about with Robin D. Laws.
I can imagine. He's an interesting guy to talk to. I'm not even that into all the stuff he works on or anything, but I've definitely enjoyed having a chat with him. Really nice guy. I think we're coming up on about the time when we started the last sprint, just an hour later. So how about another sprint?
Or a marathon.
A sprintathon, yeah, exactly. Just put on a timer for 3 hours and we can just read. No, I think half an hour. So until 20 past again.
I'm going to read this newer.
What are you reading, Britton?
Brubaker and Phillips, Where the Body Was.
Okay.
And then maybe I'll
need everyone to read Blackheart Man by Nala Hopkinson. It's so good, and no one's going to read it because Nala Hopkinson, but it's like classic fantasy, like the usual epic fantasy people will love this book. Okay. I promise you, it's really good. It's very, very classic fantasy in that regard. It's also very Caribbean and polyamorous and queer and post-colonialist and all the other stuff, but it's also very much a fantasy story that like people that like, the stuff we usually like.
Sounds interesting.
I am also hoping if I manage to complete this, I could start my reread.
Everyone is drinking rum all the time, which is pretty cool.
Oh. Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
I am also hoping maybe to start my reread of The City in the City by Sir China Mieville.
Has he been knighted?
No. But
The City in the City is really good, though.
I do remember liking The City in the City a lot, though I don't fully comprehend the content.
Another book that is narrated by John Lee.
Okay. Yeah, he's done a lot. I mean, he just died, actually. I think he just died earlier this year or something. I remember seeing something somewhere about it. Anyway, we are starting a sprint. Please mute yourselves and everybody enjoy your reading. See you in half an hour. Hello.
Good afternoon / evening. So how was your reading? What'd you read, man?
I am reading Stone of Farewell, the second book in Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn by Ted Williams.
Oh, yeah? How's that going?
It's up and down. I was talking about it earlier before you joined. It's a little bit all over the place. I think it was one of the first fantasy books to really do this kind of consistently, that it has lots of different groups of characters and they're in lots of different places and they're doing lots of different things, and chapter by chapter, or even in the middle of chapters, sometimes it switches between them. And I think George R. R. Martin does that really, really well in general. And Ted Williams,
Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, I think, was an inspiration for Martin, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course. But that particular aspect of the writing, I think Martin does better than Tad.
Yeah, because he has like way more time to actually figure this shit out.
Yeah, exactly. And so other people had already paved the way. And Ted Williams, there's just bits where I'm quite engaged, and there's other bits where I am less engaged. So,
yeah.
But overall, it's good. Good.
I read some chapters in Desolation Road, and it's so hilarious. It's very clearly doing like magical realism on Mars, and it's so funny, and it's like they're triplets. Desolation Road by Ian MacDonald, and it's incredibly good. And it's so fun. It's like they were triplets; they were all alike, like peas in a pod or days in a prison. And I'm like, you did just say that. And that's just like one of the minor things. Like every second sentence has that sort of level of like side comment where you're like,
you know what?
Where I'm just
Raph, I will add. Or wait, I think I've already added some Ian MacDonald, but I will add some Ian MacDonald just for you, buddy. I will read it.
Way more people need to read Ian MacDonald. That guy won like 3 BSFA awards at this point, and a Philip K. Dick award, and a Mythopoeic Poetic award, and other stuff. Like he's the kind of guy that like wins all the awards, and no one.
Oh damn, he's just straight up doing like a planetary romance. That's cool. All right, I will be adding. I've been wanting to see a modern take on the planetary romance. So I will add that to my list.
He's like his Luna trilogy is sometimes called like Game of Thrones in space, but it's also him just like taking 3 books to be mad at Heinlein's The Moon is a Harsh Mistress.
I might be a little triggered because Moon is a Harsh Mistress is one of my favorites from.
Oh no, it's a good book.
I have a deep fondness for that book.
No, don't get me wrong. It's a good book. I love that book. It's a really good book. He's just like, your politics are fucked, Heinlein.
Yeah.
Let me do socialism on this.
Thanks, Daniel. I will add that to the. I think I've already added this to the list. Arabella of Mars.
Ian MacDonald is absolutely worth reading, and way too few people do. And he's done like all these interesting, like his first novel is him doing like 100 Years of Solitude on Mars, and then he does like a historical novel about Ireland. That is like three different novels, but one is basically like late 19th century Butler Yeats kind of thing. The second part is full on Joycean thing, and the third part is cyberpunk in Dublin with the main heroine, killing fairies with her samurai swords in cyber Dublin in 1989, which is
as you do.
Okay, I started.
Clearly, like someone killing fairies with samurai swords in 1989's Dublin is objectively awesome. Like,
it's
if you disagree, you're wrong.
Can you name those books, Raph? Rogue, who is Irish, is asking.
King of Morning, Queen of Day is the one that I was talking about this time around, and the one before was Desolation Road.
Oh, Rogue, aren't you the one who's? Oh, sorry, Raph. Finish your thought. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
The one I read last week, which is I hadn't read that before, is The Broken Land. It was called Hearts, Hands, and Voices in the UK, and that's like Ian McDonald being smart and doing stuff that I'm like not even qualified to understand, goes like, hey, so let's talk about the Troubles and like Ireland and the Irish problems and stuff, but let's make it a magical realism novel set in the far future in Africa, but it's still about like a religious civil war that's also intersecting with the fight towards independence from like an imperial power, and that's just like incredibly weird and brave. Like not brave, like it takes some guts to write that kind of stuff. It's like, and then he went after that. He just like wrote a trilogy about the HIV epidemic in Eastern and Southern Africa as a sci-fi novel. Because Ian McDonald has never shied away from difficult topics.
Okay. Hello, Jacob. I don't remember if I've ever seen you here before, Jacob. If it's your first time, welcome to the pub. If not, then you should speak up more often. Speaking of speaking up more often, any lurkers who are in the chat and not talking, at least say hello. It's always a real treat to see who's actually here. What were you going to say, Britton?
I started Where the Body Was by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, which is kind of Ed and Sean's take on a Scorsese movie. I'm guessing Ed saw The Irishman, was like, that seems like a cool way to tell a story in a comic. So there we are. So yeah, big cast and lots of narration. It's fun. It's fun.
Ooh, what kind of books are you guys looking forward to in September? Now that it's officially started.
Return to Eden for me, and I am hoping to reread Shannon Mieville's The City in the City. So
I have,
and hopefully finishing Hyperion and Moonwitch Spider King in the meantime.
Yeah,
I think I really need to take a break from Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. We'll see how I feel at the end of Stone of Farewell. But I was actually thinking for something completely different to read another couple Dresden novels. Just because
they are fast. I'll give
they
them
are
that.
super fast. There are a couple of them I read in a day. So
look out for the nipple piercing count, though.
Yes, exactly. I will note nipples. And I need to get into this. The first omnibus of the BPRD, which is the T-shirt I'm wearing.
Yeah, I need to get into that. I've only read Hellboy from Mignola.
Yeah, I mean the idea is basically at the end of the Hellboy story, Hellboy leaves, and this is the BPRD continuing without him. He does his whole
screw this, and he leaves.
Yeah.
Can I just quickly shout out Bex for calling herself the Lurkness Monster?
The Lurkness Monster, yes.
That's so good. Like,
hi,
seriously,
Bex.
All the thumbs up for that one.
I'm glad you're here, Bex. Good to hear from you.
All right. Also, Daniel, I have added the Arabella series on my Goodreads.
Mattia is here, lurking. He actually warned me that he was going to be lurking on the Discord.
Also, hoping to catch up with some comics this month. So yeah, Where the Body Was. I'm going to read that. And the Ballad of Luther Strode. I'm hoping to get to the Luther Strode series. I've heard it's really good. My comic book guys are really pushing that one on me.
Darko is getting into my possibly favorite Malazan book, Memories of Ice.
It's one of my least favorite ones.
Of course it is.
But it's a really good one. Don't get me wrong. It does everything right. I'm just like a contrarian bastard.
Yeah, that's why I said, of course it is.
Yeah,
I love Memories of Ice. Memories of Ice is
Midnight Tides. Midnight Tides is my kind of thing.
Yeah, I like Midnight Tides as well. Especially on the reread when I already kind of knew how big a shift was coming. It took me a while to get into it the first time because I was kind of irritated that everything changed. But Memories of Ice, I don't know. Like I'm not one of those people that really ranks things the way a lot of people do. I always say that like it's in my top 3, and Memories of Ice is definitely in my top 3. Maybe the top one. I don't know. Maybe not. And that might change tomorrow.
So let me drop like 2 books that are coming out this month that you might want to check out. The first one is Darkholme by Hannu Rajaniemi, who's a Finnish writer who wrote the Quantum Thief, the Causal Angel, and the Fractal Prince. And
good
then
titles.
He wrote Summerland. Like Quantum Thief is really good. It's like a weird sci-fi heist story that is full of mathematics and heist stuff.
Okay.
And Summerland is 1950s Cold War spy story, but ghosts are real, so people can go back and talk to like the dead about stuff. And Darkholme is his new one, which is about biotechnology and stuff. So, like, he's one of those writers where I'm like, I may not like the book, but it's definitely going to make me think, because that's the kind of writer Hannu Rajaniemi is. He's very much putting in like the science in science fiction. He's going to, do weird shit.
Okay.
And the
Daniel has read some of those, but not Summerland.
Warren Ellis apparently liked Summerland. I remember that. But,
you said that.
Yes.
Cool.
Jonathan Strange, Mr. No. Good luck. That took me 4 months to read.
4 months.
4 months. Yeah.
I agree with Daniel. Hannu Rajaniemi is really good. He's unique in weird ways, and I like that. And the other one that I'm really looking forward to is The Sapling Cage by Margaret Killjoy.
I also started Kraken a few years ago. I was liking it, but I put it down because I was kind of in a bad spot.
The China Miéville one? It's so
China
good.
Miéville one. It was a lot of fun. I really
the
liked
Star
it a lot.
Trek Wizard is one of the best things ever.
Oh God, what are those 2 characters' names? They're like the assassins. It's kind of a riff on the characters from Neverwhere. One of them's called Gossi. I remember that. I can't remember.
I have no idea. It's been like 15 years since I read it. I just remember the
love
Star Trek
those
Wizard that can only sort of like teleport people if it looks like they're beaming people around.
I just remember loving those characters and just thinking they were just gleefully psychotic. It was. I want to reread. I want to read Kraken again. Give it a fair crack.
Colton is reading Carrying Comfort by Dan Simmons. I tried some of his horror. I think it was Song
Isn't
of
that his
Kali.
riff on It?
I have no idea. I haven't read it, but
I have stepped away from Dan Simmons, and I don't want to touch. I don't want to even get close to Dan Simmons writing about the Holocaust, because not that man talking about that subject.
I just didn't get into his horror. I don't have any political objection to him, but I just didn't really get into his horror. I mean, Hyperion, all 4 of them are my favorite sci-fi ever. And I recently bought 2 short story collections of his. One is called Space Enough and Time, I think. And the other one I can't remember, and I can't read it from here. Yeah. But he is actually quite an amazing short story writer. A short story by him is the only short story I have remembered ever since I read it. And it's really, really good.
The thing is that Dan Simmons is technically an incredibly good writer.
Absolutely.
But like after having gone through all of his sci-fi stuff, I don't want this person to touch the Holocaust. And Carrying Comfort is about the Holocaust. And I'm like, okay, you are way too much of a Christian Zionist to talk about that subject. I'm just not touching that, because it's going to be bad.
Fair enough.
All the wrong ways.
I completed the Soldier's Tale from Hyperion last night, which I thought was pretty good. Wasn't as good as the Priest's Tale, though.
No, Hyperion is a good book. It's not a bad book.
Soldier's Tale is probably my least favorite one.
Yeah, I can see why. There's a lot of action in it, and you're like, what? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was thinking about it. I need to reread it soon. I actually want to reread it maybe next year.
Like
but
the Scholar's Tale is the one that
Scholar's
doesn't
Tale
hold up.
The Scholar's Tale is the one I like the most.
I think that's the one that doesn't hold up, at least if you actually, have a background in philosophy, because Dan Simmons doesn't, and it sucks.
Which works fine for me because I don't either.
Yeah, but like, no, you're getting it wrong, and you're doing like dumb Christian shit there, motherfucker.
I did think the Priest Tale was fascinating.
By which I mean like dumb for Christians. Don't get me wrong. I'm not insulting Christians right now. I'm saying like even from like a Christian background, you're getting the ethics wrong. You're dumb.
I thought the Priest Tale was fascinating because it was interesting seeing how like religious ideas kind of move in the future, how that would operate, and humanity kind of devolving in this more. This might be a bit dog whistly, but primitive state.
Thornall.
That's exactly the thing.
Is the Canterbury Tales the whole structure, at least of the first book?
It's literally Canterbury Tales in space.
Hyperion is 4 books, and I think that's one of the things that puts some people off. Is the first book has this very interesting structure because it's a whole bunch of people traveling in space together, and they're telling each other their tales, which is the Canterbury Tales, basically.
It is,
and then they arrive at where they're going. And the second book doesn't have that structure at all, and it's a much more straight story.
The thing is that everyone really goes like, wow, Dan Simmons has read the Canterbury Tales. I guess this must be like really intelligent science fiction because he's quoting like a 15th century author. I guess it must be smart, which it's not. I mean, it's not bad, don't get me wrong, but it's not suddenly incredibly smart because he quotes, he kind of references the Canterbury Tales. That's not what makes it good.
That thought has never occurred to me. That thought has never occurred to me. I just thought this is a cool structure, which I see came from the Canterbury Tales, and it works. It's a really, really good book. Anyway, I am getting rather tired. So I'm going to call it as I do.
All right. Well, let me just before we leave, let me shout out the other book that is coming out this month, which is The Sapling Cage by Margaret Killjoy, a YA trans witchcraft novel. And you want to read that. It's going to be really cool.
Also, The Great Wind's coming out this month, so look forward to that.
I'm looking forward to that one as well. But a trans witchcraft YA story that is written by an anarchist trans woman, and I'm like, my kind of shit.
Sounds like it's right up your alley. Yeah. Cool. Thank you for everybody who joined on screen or in the comments. It's always good to see you all. This should be for at least a couple of months now a regular weekly thing, barring any unforeseen illnesses like last week or anything like that. But I will try and keep it consistent and weekly from now on for a while until I go out of town the next time, which will probably be the Kraken again. I hope everyone is reading awesome books. Keep it up, and I'll see you next week.
See you around.